Okay, Kumardev, you have been engaged in both the entrepreneurial world from the age of 14, when you started your first social business, and in the ICT industry since the age of 19, when you started your first for-profit company, as well your corporate ICT career. You have also been involved in the design and setting up of the Horizon 2020 SME instrument over the past years. I would like to ask you, how did you get the idea? Where was the European Young Innovators Forum born from? What inspired you?
First of all, Igor, thank you very much for the question, and thank you for inviting me to be a participant at the LIMEC conference. I'm very pleased that I was able to participate, and of course, again, apologies for not being there today in the conference in person. I wish I could be there, but unfortunately I had to stay back in Brussels. Nevertheless, I hope that everybody at the conference has a very good experience of the entire event and learns a lot, and I can contribute to the discussion that are happening. Now, the European Young Innovators Forum is something that I have been thinking about for quite some time during my career in Brussels and across different parts of Europe, looking at two different aspects. One is that young people in Europe were systematically absent from any discussions around research and innovation and entrepreneurship activity, apart from the fact that, there could be young researchers. And I found that that was a serious glaring gap. Secondly, in all my different activities around Europe, I found that young people were systematically discouraged to be innovative and entrepreneurial or to take risk. And I felt that this is something that was really holding Europe back. And as the crisis started developing, there was some initial reactions about, this is something short-term linked to the financial engineering going on in the US, and it was proved not to be that. And then it was, it's short-term, it's just a short-term debt crunch, and it would be okay with austerity, and it proved not to be that either. As you have seen, there is now a huge move by institutions to actually try and get the economy running again. And one of the things that I felt very strongly was that the way we could understand and move forward from the crisis was to engage young people and try to ensure that innovation entrepreneurship is not just discussed in the context of research, but in the context of young people and the energy that the highly educated and highly talented people in Europe have within the ages of, let's say, 16 and 36. That's not to say that those who are not in that age range are not innovative or entrepreneurial, but that these young people are able to contribute and that they are heard, and that politicians, institutions, businesses, industry, society supports that. It is from this idea and it is from this context that the European Young Innovators Forum was formed. Now, as you know very well, Igor, this is something that has now taken off in a significant way. We reach more than 500,000 young people across Europe regularly, including more than 10,000 startups on a regular basis. But we also engage very well with governments, and particularly the political class, to ensure that there is no disconnect between young people and their energies and the political decision making that is going on. It is very clear for us, and that if Europe has to move forward in a sustainable way, sustainable long-term way, young people need to be at the forefront of driving that change, and innovation entrepreneurship needs to be the key aspect.
You talk about the problem of entrepreneurship in Europe. Do you think that the US has a greater innovation potential? And if so, which are the reasons for Europe to lag behind?
So this is, I think, a very good question on two levels. Number one is that, what is innovation potential? And number two, why is the EU significantly, and I say significantly, behind the US in terms of research innovation development? So the first one on innovation potential is that innovation potential is a potential, I believe very firmly, of creative minds and talent. Yeah? And there is a lack of understanding around this, particularly in many member states in Europe, where they believe is that innovation comes from research labs, industrial labs, and research centers. And this has fundamentally proved not to be the case. And it does not mean that research innovation is not happening in industrial labs and in university and research centers, but the bulk of innovation entrepreneurship, and particularly the entrepreneurship-led innovation, is coming from people, from citizens. So innovation potential is a potential of young people and citizens at large of innovating. So that, I think, is something that where we don't understand that at that level, and we don't address it at that level. We address it structurally in terms of what do businesses need to do. But who creates a business? Who comes up with the innovative idea that can create a groundbreaking business which can then go to the top of the world? Right? It's the people. So we need to focus on the potential of people. That's the first thing. Second thing is that the indicators in terms of research innovation leadership are pretty stark. Right? I mean, when I was talking about this 2-3 years ago, the EU was behind the US, as it has been for the last 20 years in research innovation potential, and there was Japan in between. So it was US, Japan, and the EU. If I talk about it today, it's the US, Japan, South Korea, and then the EU. And this data comes from the Commission. So it's not a question of debate. This is the fact. This is the reality. Is that in spite of all these millions and millions of euros that have been spent in the last 30 years, not only have we not caught up with the US, we have actually slipped back and gone behind other countries that 20 years ago were nowhere on the horizon. For example, South Korea 20 years ago had a GDP similar to Ghana. And they have managed to become a very innovative entrepreneurial society that is now leading the indices around the world in terms of research innovation potential. And where is Europe? The next one will be China, which is doing very well. Even for the fact that they have a larger size and larger scale of the problem, they're doing very well. So we are definitely behind, and this is because the innovation potential of young people in particular, and citizens at large in general, is not being addressed and is not being supported. Today, if you want to start an innovative company somewhere in Europe, the hurdles that you have to go through largely override the advantages or the opportunities that you have. And that starts not only with regulation, but also financing, but at a very basic fundamental level of mindsets. People are not ready to support others who want to take risks and be innovative. So of course, governments and politicians, societies are therefore not addressing the issue at the level that it should be.
Thank you. Companies often complain about the lack of skilled workers.
Yeah.
Especially in what concerns ICT.
Yes.
What steps could the EU governments and local powers take to solve this problem? Do you think that formal education is the only problem, or do you think that, for example, we can retrain our labor force to adapt it to market needs?
Yes, so this is a hugely important question right now as the Juncker Commission and the new European setup starts to gather steam and starts to set into motion policies. So first of all, let's look at the scale of the problem. If you look at the recent statistics from the Commission, and if I'm not mistaken, it was almost 2 million ICT workers missing from Europe. So this is 2 million ICT jobs that need to be filled and are not filled as of 2014 December. That is a huge number. And that typifies where the scale of the problem lies. Right? So that's the first thing. Second thing is that formal education in Europe is among the best in the world. In fact, many European universities are in the top 5. I'm from one of those European universities. My higher education was one European university that is top 4 in the world. So in terms of formal education, we do very well. And we set the standards. There's no question about that. So formal education is not the answer, because if how much better can it get? This is not the issue at the level that it is being projected as. I know a lot of universities, and in fact now even schools, saying, "Oh yes, well, we need to spend more money on formal education." But I think that's of course useful, but that's not the core of the problem. The core of the problem is that the formal education is not adapted to the needs of the market, and there is a huge gap between formal education centers, particularly universities, and market needs. And if you go down to, let's say, the primary school level or the school level, the problem is even more stark, because what you're being taught in schools and how you're being taught them has no relevance to what you need to do on the market. So that's the issue, is that there needs to be a fundamental change of curriculum and the way education is approached, and a lot of people are working on that. But even if you do all of that, let's assume that the world is perfect and we've done all that in the next 5 years, you will not come anywhere near to scaling the 2 million problem, which in 5 years will be 3 million or 3.5, right? So Europe will continue to head backwards because you will not be able to cover this gap of highly skilled workers that you need. So where will that come from? Number one, e-skills and e-leadership. Enable young people to get the skills that they want at a cost point and a flexibility in a cost point that they can afford and a flexible structure that applies to their lives. That is what is required to get a lot of young people who want to get into ICT and want to have technology skills to actually get there. That doesn't exist today. Try and get a course on coding for 3 days. The cost is prohibitive for the good ones, and for the other ones, it's a university course that takes 3 months. How can you do that while you're working or you're supporting yourself or you're doing a PhD or whatever, right? So these are the issues that the Commission is now trying to address. I know the Parliament is also very active on this. I'm speaking at the leadership conference that will happen in June in Brussels on that, and there's a recognition of the problem. But it's very key that we do not let this debate be taken over by universities, because that is what is happening. Universities are saying we are the experts in education and hence we should have the solution to this issue. But in fact, the universities are the problem.
Yes, I mean, indeed, and this new question relates very much to what you are now saying. If we look at our current statistical data, we find that we have growing numbers of youth unemployment and at the same time the most highly educated generation ever. So our educational systems seem to be failing us. We have been taught to go to the university and get a job in big companies. Why is entrepreneurship not considered as an alternative? What can we do about it? Can we, for example, introduce entrepreneurship courses in primary school or high school?
I love the way this debate is shaping up and this discussion is shaping up, because I think this is exactly the kind of area that we need to address. Yes, number one, entrepreneurship is seen as a side activity. It's kind of like, yeah, at the end of the school week, you can have a badminton class, you can do a yoga class, or hey, you can attend an entrepreneurship workshop. This is how it is seen in most schools. This is the reality, irrespective of what they tell you in the conferences. This is what is the reality. There are some exceptions, of course. In the UK now, they have a program that even 5-year-olds will be taught entrepreneurship, etc. We'll have to see how that develops. But largely, this is the attitude towards entrepreneurship, and it is a one more activity to fill somebody's time outside of the real curriculum. And that mindset is being enforced by the people in charge of designing our education curriculums, which is distributed across Europe and not centralized. So the Bologna process tried to bring some standardization into the thing, but education is a distributed topic, so even regions have control of that. So indeed, we need to infuse entrepreneurship and innovation thinking into the curriculum itself at a very young age. But that is not enough. What we also need to do is ensure that there are many more opportunities for young people to have a real entrepreneurship experience, and not just in the classroom designing, let's say, projects that get you a grade. You know, like I really appreciate the work being done by organizations like Jade and others in terms of, you know, trying to train people on some entrepreneurial aspect. But you need to have real projects. As you know from my CV, my first entrepreneurship project was at the age of 14. It was a social business. It was a library, in fact, and it went bankrupt in 3 weeks. But what I learned from that, number one, made me what I am today, and number two, gave me the interest in entrepreneurship that went way beyond anything that I could learn in school. But connecting the two topics in terms of entrepreneurship, lack of skills, and what we can do is the fact that this is not something that can be done piecemeal. And this is where I find the main issue, is that education is not a pan-European subject per se, but it needs to be. We need to have some overall direction in terms of where this needs to go. And it's a real pity that the EITs have been such a failure. We're not to get into why or how, but that doesn't mean that we should not take pan-European initiatives around entrepreneurial education and encouraging young people to be entrepreneurial through structured activities, including workshop, exchange programs with other countries where they can learn from their peers in a peer-to-peer learning mode and not through some expert in a classroom mode, and also to interact and understand that entrepreneurship is as natural as brushing your teeth. I'm sorry, but it is. And we don't want to recognize that.
We talked already extensively on education. My question now is a bit more broad and connects a bit to what you said in the beginning. How can politicians promote entrepreneurship? I mean, what can the state do knowing that entrepreneurship should come from the individuals and not from the state? Are subsidies the solution, or should we cut red tape, simplify taxation, bureaucracy, company registration?
So this is my favorite topic, but of course, conscious of the time, I'm not going to monopolize the discussion. However, the first thing, and this I think we need to be very clear and unequivocal about, is that yes, politicians at the national level and particularly at the European level have a very concrete role to play in encouraging innovation entrepreneurship in Europe. So those people who are saying, oh, this is not in the ambit of politicians, they are in denial about the European reality. Yeah? Here we do need governments, national level government, regional governments, particularly the European structure, to be active and proactive on this topic. Number two, I totally am with you on the fact that subsidies given in the way that they are currently being given are a complete misdirection. So for example, the youth guarantee to me is exactly the wrong message. To say that a young person with skills, talent, education should be paid because they don't have something to do, to me sounds like, are we so defeatist as a society that we believe that young people with all the skills have nothing to do or cannot contribute or cannot build something? No, the youth guarantee is a mistake. What we should do is the reverse, is to encourage young people to take up entrepreneurial projects and support that in an infrastructure way. So entrepreneurship and innovation has two aspects: the creativity, the talent, the idea, the development, and the infrastructure. And the infrastructure in Europe is expensive. That infrastructure also includes regulation, taxation, and that is where the state can act and should act and create the framework conditions that allows young people to then develop their talent and creativity and be entrepreneurial. And I don't see why this is such a topic where we can say, oh no, politicians, yes, we need regulations to be simplified. That is a political topic. We need taxation to be working around the fact that entrepreneurial companies, a lot of them fail early, and some of them that grow generate huge amount of jobs. Taxation needs to revolve around these concepts. We also need to have the fact that infrastructure in Europe is very hard to acquire for a young company. Just for example, if you wanted to, let's say, have a pan-European delivery network, it's massively expensive because of the regulation and the number of permits that you would need to get. I'm talking about, let's take an example that I'm very interested in, drones, for example. Europe has been a leader in the drone technology, and that has come from a number of different areas. However, if today you look at the top drone producing nations, it's Hong Kong, China, and the US. Not Europe. We're not producing any major drones in Europe. There are some small SMEs doing something, but all the major drones are coming from these countries. So the one that was flying over the Eiffel Tower was the Phantom DJI. This is provided by a company called DJI. DJI is based out of Hong Kong. In fact, its production facilities in Shenzhen. So why? Because it's cheaper and easier to do that over here. Of course, we cannot have the same conditions, but we can have support and action to ensure that there are conditions so that companies can produce and develop technologies here beyond the lab state. So the SME instrument, of which I have been partially involved in the designing, is one very good step, but it's not the only step. So it's not about subsidies, it's about ensuring that the state is involved in a smart way to enable entrepreneurship. And absolutely, we would like to see more action there from the European Parliament, from the member states, from the largest parties in Europe, proactively on this topic.
Not big states, but smart states. I couldn't think of a better way to finish this interview. Thank you very much, Kumardev, for your time and for your insights. I'm sure that our participants will love it.
Thank you very much, Igor. That was very interesting. And again, apologies for not being there. I wish I could be there, but I do wish you an excellent conference, and I hope that all the discussions we're having here are then translated later on into positive steps and initiatives across Europe. Thank you.